a great day. It is a great day. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. It's Neumy's birthday. That's reason to celebrate. That's reason to jam. That's reason to degen it up with the lads, draft some teams. Number 2, Mark Garcia's back. Hot off a Roto World podcast debut, or at least we're calling it a debut. And people are talking. People are talking. Not a coincidence. Karain comes on the show. Boom. Ends up on NBC Sports dropping picks. Mark comes on the show. Boom. Roto World podcast for NBC the following week. People are calling this a necessary, a mandatory career stepping stone to get ahead in this industry. You got to come hang with the Badge Bros. And number 3, most importantly, today represents new hope. Turn the page on last week. New slate. Put that Toyota Corolla losing week behind us. And let's go win us a Lambo. It is Lambo week. We are going out there. Let's bring in the boys, the birthday boy, and Mark Garcia. How we doing, lads?
Doing well. Doing well, man. Your intros, I swear, they continue to just get better and better. So
that's all I got. All I got is good intros. I got no good takes. I got to have good intros, right?
Yo, what is a Toyota, dude?
Yeah, Toyota. It's a Canadian way of saying Toyota.
Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, we don't fuck around with that. We just buy Fords, man.
Yeah.
What's good? Have we been in the drafting streets yet, Neumy?
Yeah, I was in the first 4 of them that dropped, like in the lobbies before ADP, and then I continued to hammer it. I've only done a couple this morning, but I'm at 15 right now. So
you're well ahead of the curve then. You're well ahead of the curve. Yeah.
I was in it before. I was basically setting the ADP. So
okay,
and it didn't. Well,
you're not that important.
I would help and shift it, but yeah, it's gross. It's a gross slate.
Well, before I let Mark jump in here, let's just talk about one overarching thing. We got no Miami Bengals. We got no Vikings Saints. We got no Chiefs Bucks. We got no Niners Rams. So we're left with a slate without Waddle, Hill, Chase, Higgins, Mixon, Cook, Madison, like that. Maybe Cook, Madison, Jefferson, Kamara, Evans, Lenny, Godwin, maybe Kelsey, CEH, Mahomes, like Debo. We're left without all of these players. Cup, Kittle, A-Rob. Like this is a crazy slate, and I think that's why we're seeing this in ADP right now, where all the quarterbacks are pushed up at the top because there's so much uncertainty in this slate because we're missing all those premium targets. Mark, what's good, man? Have you dove deep into this stuff? Have we taken a look at the slate yet?
Yeah, always grinding, baby. No, I haven't been drafting. I haven't my process starts, and I'm trying to. So my DFS process starts with diving into all the games first. I do it like in a bubble. I do my own thing, and then I'll branch out from there. And so I'm trying to figure out how I fold in best ball drafting into that process because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is like so research and writing the edge and doing the end around and all that stuff heavy that like I need to figure out when is my time to start getting in these best ball streets.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for me personally, it's dive in right as soon as it opens and think later in some regards, and just like trust my instincts of like, okay, I can beat the market to ADP in a couple spots, and I'll just fire, like 2-3 bullets like that, get a feel for it, and then I'll do the deep dive research stuff. But it's interesting. This pivots great into what I want to talk about to start here is your DFS process ported to these games. Your DFS process, do you hand build initially just to get like a feel of the slate and like, hey, I just got, a handful of guys that I've grabbed and targeted here and then do the research? Or are you going, not even looking at salaries, you're just looking at all the game environments and then looking at the salaries and stuff like that?
My own personal process, I want all of my thoughts on individual games, on individual players, on game environments. I want all that laid out before I even look at salary and pricing. Okay. And then I'll start looking at like salary and pricing. I'll start tinkering, and then I'll also look at optimizers and like range of outcome predictors, like GPP ceiling tools, stuff like that. So I want like my base thoughts hammered out first, and then I'll start bringing in the data. And then I'll see where those two either like meet or where I can start building leverage from there. Like ownership percentages, projections based off of, or I guess bounced off of range of outcomes predictors, projections. I don't like using just mean projections or median projections just because it doesn't tell you a lot.
Preaching to the choir, baby.
Yeah,
Preaching to the choir.
It doesn't give you any actionable info, but if you look at like ownership projections versus like an 80% outcome projection, that can give you spots for leverage and spots where you can take advantage of the field biases and tendencies and stuff. So yeah, long answer, I guess, to a short question is like, yeah, I try and get my thoughts in a bubble first, and then I'll start bringing in incorporating the numbers and stuff after that.
Yeah, I like that. Well, Neumy, where's your process start for these contests?
I would say the exact same. So I before, because we've gotten now 2 weeks of them dropping basically on after Monday Night Football locks. So I was Monday afternoon, I basically spent like an hour and just realizing what's on this slate, trying to figure out what I would like personally. Because I do the same thing. The first week we kind of talked about it, how I went straight up. I'm like, all right, I'm going to check out projections, check out Vegas totals, go all that first, and then go in and start drafting. I like going in and going with my own takes first, and then kind of, especially with these first drafts. So I just identified the spots right away. And I think it's the spots that everyone else saw, which was Buffalo, Baltimore. But then, I mean, at first you got to see the ADP and what jumps up on your screen. So I saw that. And then I realized we're just lack of not lack, but so many superstars. I mean, so many guys are not on this slate that it makes it super gross. And then when you saw the initial drafts there was all quarterbacks. There was Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb to initially start on the screen. That was it. That was the only thing on the screen. So people initially had to jump, and then that's why it was all quarterbacks to start. So I just tried to go with basically take the stars before anything. I'm trying to focus as I see all these comments pop up, but I tried to just go with like literally take the superstars of what's on the slate and try and get those combos.
Okay, I like it. I like it a lot. I just want to talk to something here where I think it's very slate specific, our approach to these. And for me personally, looking at this slate and seeing the context of, oh my God, Allen, Lamar, and Hurts are the first three players off the board. They're the highest priced quarterbacks on DraftKings. Rightfully so. They're in great game environments. But then you see Diggs, Andrews fall behind there. And it's going to be very, very hard based on ADP as it is right now to build out super game stacks, right? Like it's going to be damn near impossible to chase Allen plus Diggs plus Andrews. So it brings in this very interesting dynamic where Mark and I have talked before about an exploitative strategy versus a GTO strategy. And looking at this slate, my mind instantly goes, holy shit, I know this is the best game environment on the slate. I know there's so much talent in that game. Do I full fade? Do I just take an exploitative strategy to this, full fade the thing, and then just get different elsewhere? It's a super high variance strategy, but that's where my mind instantly goes, opposed to drafting 150 teams where I take Allen and Lamar at the front and just pray every single time that one of them falls to build that super team stack that nobody else has. What do we think about that?
If you look at the state of the slate, so obviously the first game that jumps off the page is Buffalo and Baltimore, right? You look at the game total, it's at 51.5. We also have a Seattle-Detroit game. This sounds so gross, but like Seattle-Detroit opened at 50.0, a point and a half behind that like super crazy expected game. Also, what's going on in Detroit? Swift is most likely out for a few weeks. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sun God, sprained his ankle in the third quarter of that game. So it's like now you start getting these guys like Craig Reynolds and like who else could be stepping up in Detroit. Last round pick guys, right? Probably in best ball to start the week. But like you see, there's other ways to build around these other game environments that could be top of the week as well. Other game environments like Jack's Philly is at a 48.0 game total. Denver, Las Vegas. I'm not even going to talk about that because that's probably going to go super under. That opened at 46.0. But like, you get what I'm saying is like, although like there is one clear and above like top game environment on this slate, and this goes for DFS as well, there's other game environments that opened up with game totals within 3 points. So this is one of those slates where it's back to like week 2 mindset. So if you think about like the slate overall, week 1 was like, holy shit, there's value everywhere because nobody knows what's going on with pricing. Pricing came out a year and a half ago, right?
Right.
Port that over to best ball. It's like, hey, this contest has been open for a long time, so I have a ton of maneuverability. Week 2 was like, we only had 2 top game environments. It was like, I forget what exactly those game environments were, but there were 2 game environments with like a 47 point total or more. So everyone was building around those 2 game environments. And then what happened? It was like this Miami and Baltimore game or bust, basically.
Right.
Week 3 was like back to everybody is building around one game environment. That game environment was like Buffalo and Miami. And everyone was like, you had to have this game environment, right? And so now we're back into that similar mindset of like, everybody wants this Buffalo Baltimore because these are 2 offenses that are in the top 10 in pass rate over expectation. These are 2 offenses who are basically chucking the football because they have to at this point, right? Buffalo's offensive line, poor run blocking. Baltimore's offensive line, extremely battered and bruised. Their secondary, they played with like 1 of 6 or 1 of 5 starting members in their secondary last week. So there's all this like pointing to that game environment as opposed to like searching for, I'm going to target other game environments and just bet all my money on Buffalo, Baltimore failing. There are other ways. So like, if you think about like the range of outcomes of the slate entirely, like there are so many different paths that could be viable to lead us to first place, along from like all in Buffalo, Baltimore to like full fade and then everything in between. Right. So like, we don't know what optimal path on the game tree is right now. All we know are there are ways to gain exposure to that entire game tree that the field is highly unlikely to utilize. Right.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And there's some very, like, if we want to target some specific player names associated with that and target that late, like, I mean, no one's touching Dobbins. No one's touching Singletary. Nobody's like, Bateman's basically only being used as a run back. Isaiah McKenzie's free right now. So while ownership is consolidating very heavily to that game environment, it's basically only the top 4 or 5 end pieces right now.
Yeah, because you look at like last week with Buffalo in particular, like I wrote in the end around, which is DFS centric, but it's the same line of thinking as that we're trying to pour over here best ball. I was like, well, we know this is the clear game environment, the Buffalo Miami game. There are ways to gain exposure to that game environment without just either full fading or doing what the field is doing. What was the field doing? They're like, all right, I'm going to stack Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and move on. And like, this is my game, like my exposure to that game environment. Well, it's like, what are the ways that to gain leverage? One, betting on that game environment failing, which relatively kind of did, but there still were fantasy viable scores. Some of the ones that I highlighted last week were Isaiah McKenzie, because he's very his utilization is very game plan specific. And if Miami was going to be blitzing like crazy, he's one of those outlets.
Which they did. Yeah.
However, I totally missed freaking Devin Singletary, who got 12 targets. And
he had 11 targets, tied for the team lead in that game environment. It was bizarre. But that game was just bizarre in general because you had 90 offensive plays ran by the Bills, 400 yards, passing from Allen. Yeah, it's crazy.
And like 6 players who couldn't even finish the game for heat-related issues.
Right, yeah, including the entire offensive line. Right?
Yeah, I don't know how I missed that outcome of like, oh, yeah, they're going to start bleeding players because it's too damn hot.
Yeah. Neumy, how has your approach been so far to this game? Are you taking the quarterbacks early or are you letting someone else take them? What's your approach been so far?
So everything that he pointed, I'll piggyback on and say that's literally what I've been doing. I have 1 Lamar and 1 Josh Allen, and that's the first 2 drafts because I was trying to get the stacks and see if I could get them. I didn't.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. So after that, I've been targeting literally what he just said, and that's a bunch of Seattle, Detroit. Although it's mainly when Amon-Ra has been falling. I've got Amon-Ra on the 5th, so I'm just like, you know what?
That sweet Q tag beside Amon-Ra's name right there. Yeah.
And then I also, the same thing with Jacksonville, Philly. I have a lot of Trevor Lawrence right now, just the way it has. And then I don't know if I'm seeing on Fantasy Labs, and I've been using this as Cleveland and Atlanta.
Yeah.
I've been targeting that in a lot of minis. Like I've been liking Drake London. He's basically free. I've been liking pairing him up with Cooper. So my exposures line up exactly the way you've done that. And when it comes to getting weird, I have on the Bills, basically, my easiest way to figure out who's getting drafted and basically who's free is just typing in the name of the team. And I just write them down by each total and see. And when you have Knox, McKenzie, and Singletary basically being free, that's been my one-off stabs I've been taking. I haven't been focusing on bringing back or doing anything like that. The same thing goes for Bateman. I have a couple just single like that. Otherwise, that was, again, in my first ones. Otherwise, I've been gravitating towards the same thing. I've told Nez, and I'm just going to full fade this game, basically. Like, it's so impossible to get the nut outcomes in this game unless it just really goes off and you're just stacking. Like, I've gotten a couple Lamar Andrews, and that was, again, early, just because I'm like, I'm going to do it. But it's just, it's so tough. It's so tough with so many other with the same thing he said, with these game totals right next door, like creeping right up to it. And then I think also there's a pending hurricane after Remnants that we still could be a problem. I don't know how big we should focus on that on a Tuesday, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways for this game to fail.
Mm-hmm. I think the only way the hurricane directly impacts this slate is the Carolina game. I don't think it comes close enough elsewhere. Yeah. But I'm not a meteorologist. Just
Atlanta is within the realm of outreach, I think, for the outskirts of the storm.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah. But dome game. So do they still play a dome game? Like, I don't know. That's just, anyways, we can speculate all day on shit like that, but I just want to like talk. We brought up, like you said, full fade. Mark's talking about mixing late and stuff like this. It's very interesting. The context of this slate reminds me a lot of a showdown, because we are getting basically, and Michael touched to it in the comments here, in these showdown slates, you're basically looking to build a super team of, like last night's game environment, for instance, to get Barkley and Lamb on the same team, or to get these high ADP targets that should not fall together and find them together. And we have to draft at mass volume for that to occur. That is probably the optimal roster construction for this slate right now. I don't know that's how I want to go about this slate right now, right? And just throwing that out there is, I don't think we should advocate full fade, but I also don't think we should advocate draft 150 and just try over and over again to get that stack. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm full, not full fade. I'm just full fading the
high price pieces.
Yeah, and I'm full fading them, basically trying to chase that stack, because it's just, unless you get some lucky draft room, it's not going to happen. But yeah, like you said, like I do like mixing in like a Knox, Singletary, Bateman. They're interesting pieces in that game, can still get you there. Like, and I don't advocate for full fading, so no.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to touch on something, because guys are talking in the chat right now about those showdown style contests and how, like, yes, it was a Saquon and a CD Lamb lineup with Shepard that takes that down. And then in the fourth contest, it's a Barkley Pollard. This speaks so heavily to what we've talked about in the past, where we love the 2-game slate and the idea that Underdog was running with the 2-game slate. Unfortunately, it didn't fill last week, so they've kind of gone away from that now. But this is the nature of these contests, is some of these lineups will be thrown out because there's clear collusion. And some of them will be organically obtained by someone like Freezer, who's putting in 150 in every single one of these contests, who's just auto drafting off a rank sheet over and over again, hoping that other people make mistake. And it's why that game is not that fun to play. And there's not much strategy for us to talk about those given slates, because we broke it down yesterday and basically everything we said didn't fucking matter, because all you needed was to get lucky as hell and break out one of these lineups. There's going to be some amendment to these contests, because we cannot keep running and throwing money at these contests over and over again looking this way, because it is just a volume winner and it's a rake sink, in my opinion. But I think Underdog's taken some very good stances, both in eliminating the collusion, in terms of they've thrown out lineups that are clear collusions. But like Paul says, a very smart player is he fades the single game slates for this reason, because you're just chasing those extreme outlying builds. So if you're not playing volume in those, I really can't advocate for playing them right now. But to each their own. If you want a little sweat on the game and try and roll and get lucky in those contests, go for it. To pivot back to this slate, if we take these 3 quarterbacks off the board right now, who is your guys' 101 for the week? Because I think this is a very fun debate. Mark, do you have a name for me out of this kind of upper echelon bunching? Because I don't think it's clear.
Outside of the quarterbacks?
Outside of the quarterbacks.
It's probably Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Because you have to think about, like, there's so much shit that goes into it, but like positional scarcity and Andrews being like the only near full snap rate player on Baltimore. Yeah. Now consider the like defensive tackle injuries in Buffalo, the secondary injuries, the linebacker core is undersized, and not generally known as quick. So it'd probably have to be Andrews.
Depleted secondary, and the strength of that defense is rush, which means ball out early, which means ball across middle of field, which means Andrews eats in the middle, playing 90% of snaps.
Well, the strength of that, they're actually one of the lower blitzing teams in the NFL, if not the lowest, I think.
Okay.
This season, the strength of that defense is the ability to settle into zone and have the front 4 reach home, because they're that good. But like now, like 2 defensive tackles missed last week. They have linebacker injuries, and obviously Poyer and he was out last week. And then what was the other safety dude? Former Packer Micah Hyde, was out, is out for the season. So injuries pretty much in all 3 levels, which is going to affect, obviously, you're playing zone with new bodies. That's like completely based off of communication and stuff like that. If they're playing with new bodies and they don't have the reps, there's definite miscommunication or that where that could come in. And what does that mean? Splash plays, broken coverages, all that good stuff. So
absolutely. Neumy, outside of the quarterbacks, who do you like up top as your 101?
My exposures say Mark Andrews and then Jonathan Taylor. Yeah,
okay,
it's Mark Andrews in 9 of my 15 drafts. So
nice.
And it's specifically
and are you actually taking him 101? Like, are you taking him over the quarterbacks?
No.
Or are we just like, with the quarterbacks gone, now it's Mark Andrews?
No. So in the first ones, he was way, way down there. So I was trying to wait. So that's why I didn't have him till after. I was trying to play the waiting game and get him late. But he was always going in that second round here. Now it's been in that like anywhere up from the 4th, 5th, 6th pick, like after those quarterbacks. Like, it's the same thing you listed, the positional scarcity. Like, there's no Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
So it's Mark Andrews. Like, it's just you get Mark Andrews, and then there's, like, we were just talking about how there's this slate you can get different in so many ways, and I'm just like locking up Andrews. That's been my. It wasn't like that. I'm pretty sure my first 6 drafts I did not have him because I couldn't get him, and then at that point it was just like, all right, now I'm just gonna lock. Like, I need to lock him, but. It's Andrews and then a lot of JT. So,
okay, I like it. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that is approximately the order in which I've been gravitating to them. I've been going Andrews, Diggs, Taylor, McCaffrey, AJ Brown, Adams, Barkley. I do not know if that is correct or not. That's my initial best effort at projections with the totals and stuff without actual smart guys projections having come out yet. And that's what I'm kind of gravitating towards. And I really like the quarterbacks push up early. Someone takes JT, and me having the mini game stack and my biggest exposure opposed to, I guess, running naked quarterback. My biggest exposure to that Baltimore Buffalo environment right now is shaping up to be Andrews plus Diggs at the 6-7 turn there if I can get it. If it's there, I think I take it almost every time and just be like, that's how I get that game environment and then get different elsewhere. That's what I'm gravitating towards. Whether right, wrong, who knows? But I think a lot of people have that exact same mindset. So I think that's going to be very chalky as the week goes on. Any other names you guys want to point out from the upper echelon of this board? Or can we jump over and maybe talk about some gross names, talk about deeper game environments?
Where's Henry going? Is he kind of at that 2-3 turn?
Thereabouts. Some people, I've seen Henry go 104 once. That might just be, someone taking a stand and trying to get different, or someone being a recreational player. But Henry has been, Henry's an interesting one because that pass game usage last week looks nice. But as you pointed out on the Roto World podcast there, Mark, it might have just been, not designed routes. It's just happenstance, like chip and go, turn around and grab the ball kind of thing. What'd you see?
He was straight up chip and go and turn around 7 yards down the field. That was like, it happened 10, 12 times. And he just happened to see 6 of those as targets under pressure.
Encouraging nonetheless, question mark, or?
I think so. It's probably more noise than I would be willing to bet that it's more noise than a trend. That said, where do we want to tackle Henry, or where do we want to get exposure to Henry? It's game environments where we can expect Tennessee to be one, where we can expect Tennessee to win, and 2, where we can expect a high scoring game. I broke down, what was it? I think it was week 1's end around, where Derrick Henry is so much more useful in game environments where it develops into a shootout, as opposed to where it's just like Tennessee is projected to just smash. So this might be a game environment, even though Indy is like so broken right now. This setting up, I think this is setting up as like a game environment where we can expect Henry to see like the 25 to 32 running back opportunity range, which is like Smashville. I don't know. I was curious where he was going.
No, I like that a lot. Last week was really strange with Henry in general, just because of that game. It was like, oh my God, this is such a mismatch without Taylor Lewan on that offensive line. And it was just like, oh, look at this Raiders pass rush. It's just going to get home over and over again. Like, that's the strength of their defense, right? And it was like, I just can't go to Henry. And then he kept falling and falling. And then all of a sudden people were building super teams, in quotations, with Henry as their only back in the 4th and 5th round, because we just kind of forgot that it's like, hey, it's still Derrick Henry and he can still break a slate in any given week, right?
Yeah.
Neumy, anything to add there, man?
My only question to Mark would be, so I have 4 Henry Taylor combos, and that's specifically because Henry's fallen to that 4-5 turn. And it's like, I look at it, I'm like, I'm pressed for 30 seconds and I see the correlation of the 2 running backs. It's like, okay, we normally don't want to do that, but I'm like, what if these offenses just run through these 2 guys?
Which they very well could.
And that's been my, so I've just looked up and I have 4 combos of that. So I didn't even, and it was literally only because Henry was sitting at that, but he's sometimes just fall into that 4-5 turn. And I'm just like, well, I mean, he's my best option here when I'm looking at like these wide receiver options, because all the wide receivers get pushed up. So I'm like, Henry or like an Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk. I'm like, I'm going to go Henry with the correlation. So that's my only question. If that was viable, if you think that's viable.
I think it is. Yeah. Particularly with those 2 backs where it's like at any point they could rip off a 60-yarder and then just ignite that game environment. So like, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is like, game environments don't take off because the team is good. They take off because a player is good. Like they take off because a player rips a 60-yarder or a 75-yard bomb. Like look at Baltimore last weekend, where it was like that game environment was like 28-7 at halftime, but it took off because how Baltimore got to that 28 is like they returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and then they chipped away with like Mark Andrews, but then they hit Rashad Bateman for like a 75-yarder, and it was just like that's how that game took off, because the individual skill of Devin Duvernay in the return game, Pro Bowl player, and Rashad Bateman faster than Hollywood, so they pretty much upgraded in how they were utilizing that alpha role. So like that's how that game took off. It wasn't like Baltimore's this like outstanding team, Miami's this outstanding team. Well, it's like if pushed to the limit based on one player ripping it open, like now we're going to see some fireworks, because each of these teams have, like Tyreek Hill, how did they get back in the game? He ripped off 2 long ones. Then they chipped away with Jalen Waddle. It's like, that's what I'm looking for. So like to tie all that together, like, yeah, like how is that game environment going to hit the over or take off? It's probably going to be either Derrick Henry or JT ripping a long one. And yeah, that's just kind of what it is.
It's basically just those two or Pittman. Like that's kind of like the paths to it.
Pittman's
right?
Pittman's like this 25-26 team target market share, like X modified X role. So like even
he's the old Michael Thomas. He's the old Michael Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. Player. So he's like a possession wide receiver. He's going to the sticks, couple yards past. He's running ins, curls, outs, slants, all these like low upside generating routes. So he's going to need volume. So a viable way to play that is like Derrick Henry with Pittman, because Pittman would need an increase to volume. Like in week 1, it was like I was cautioning against playing Michael Pittman, even though like, oh, he's the screaming value. I was like, well, his role is not conducive to like these upside generating plays. It's just like he lucked into a maximum 92 play offensive play game where it was like an overtime game, and he still only saw 26% team target market share in that game. It was just that like he saw the volume needed to pay off that price. So yeah, it's interesting setup, but yeah.
The chat's talking about Chubb quite a bit here, and as we saw, Chubb's ADP is pushed up, and we're talking about a 50 total game where it's basically 25 aside. This is a game that sets up kind of quote unquote like gross, but the nice thing about this is both sides have consolidated offenses, right? Like we can pretty much pinpoint there's 8 players in this game, and those are the only ones who have a potential to break this game. So my eyes have been gravitating a lot to this Atlanta game as like an indoor game environment, Mariota with a rushing floor, because after the first three, maybe 4, we could talk about the quarterback position in a second, but after the first kind of like 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks are off the board, it's kind of a free for all. It's just throw a dart, mix in some Geno, mix in some Goff, mix in some Mariota with the rushing floor. And that's where I'm going, okay, if we believe what we saw from Pitts last week, 4 manufactured touches on the opening drive, including a pass interference call in the end zone, if we're believing that kind of volume and this offense is going to run through, London, Pitts, and CPAT, I'm feeling this game environment, especially as run backs off of Chubb. Or if we want to get cute with it, we take Kareem Hunt in the last round and build it back as Pitts is the focal point of that game. What are we seeing there? Neumy, you seem to be nodding your head in agreement here. You like this call, or?
Yeah, I don't have any Chubb, and I have 5 drafts with Hunt. So that's how I've been. I've been just taking the Hunt approach. If he's going to be, super free, like he's not even. Yes, he's in the 35. So he's just buried with all of the conglomerates, all the running backs in the 35 range. So that's, we saw him do it week 1. So that's just been my quick 15 drafts. Obviously, it's like. That's pretty high for Chubb as being the second above Saquon and above CMC. Like I'll let you take that, and I'll take my Saquon and CMC after. Like,
yeah, Chubb's a little bit better in half point PPR, but I think everyone's just chasing those totals from last week, right? Everyone's just chasing what they saw last week, and it's kind of like, well, it could just be a Hunt week, Like let's paint a narrative street here. Like sure, Cleveland's I think they're 2-point favorites or like 1.5 point favorites going into Atlanta. But if we go narrative street on this and all of a sudden Atlanta's up 14-0 in this game environment, and it's Pitts who scores one and Mariota has one on the ground, or CPAT punches one in on the ground, like that's a Kareem Hunt script through and through, and that can definitely still reach total. And the piece you need is not Nick Chubb, right?
Yeah. This I just looked up some of the statistics behind that game. I haven't written it up yet, but I think that's one of my games this week.
Okay.
Atlanta leads the league in adjusted line yards on offense, which is run blocking metric. That's super interesting to me. They have the lowest stuffed rank, meaning they get stuffed at the line of scrimmage.
Okay.
That's interesting to me. And then I pulled up Cleveland's defensive line, and this is also the interesting part. Both Cleveland and Atlanta are bottom 5 in the NFL in adjusted line yards on defense to begin the year. So like, this is the kind of range where I start paying more attention to those kind of metrics. But like Cleveland,
you mean range in terms of stickiness now that we're into week 4, like we have 3-game sample.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I just want to clarify.
But the net adjusted line yards, which is like a metric I made up 2 years ago, which is just like painting the picture of like a defensive line's givingness and an offensive line's yards created, the push, that's 5.14. The NFL average for a matchup is about 4.2. So that's pretty crazy. And that's for Atlanta, which is interesting.
What would you consider like is league average, or, for that metric?
Yeah, about 4.2.
4.2. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, and they haven't played, like Atlanta hasn't played slouch teams, right? Like they've played New Orleans, who's normally a very aggressive run stopping front, like historically. And then they've played the Rams, which is, Aaron Donald. Like that's all you need to say, right? Like that's pretty impressive metric to have against that opposition. I mean, Seattle, you can kind of throw out the window, but yeah, it's just very interesting. All right. I think we can almost jump into draft here. I think there's 2 more games that I just kind of want to talk like macro level. It's this Raiders and Broncos game, because we have some slate breaking upside talent that is being crazy suppressed in Sutton and Judy. Like Judy's going undrafted. I know it's been really ugly, and maybe Russell Wilson's washed. Who knows? Maybe he is just really, really small. But like, I don't know what to make of this contest other than, wow, there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball, and maybe it has to just get home one of these weeks. Are we throwing any darts at that Broncos side? What have we seen there?
I think as long as they're chilling in the last couple of rounds, you can take darts all day for sure.
Yeah. Just as one-offs, or would you go back to the Russ well this week?
I don't think I would stack up any offense that is headed by Nathaniel Hackett.
Yep, that's fair. I kind of like that. Yeah, Neumy, what are you seeing in this game environment, dude?
Yeah, that's been my kind of mini stack, as I've liked Sutton. I've been so I like. I mean, Adams is falling sometimes. Today he fell to the 3rd round, which was just. I mean, I guess that's where his kind of ADP, I guess, lines up. Not really, but
not quite. Not quite.
He's the 3rd wide receiver, so I've been taking Devontae. I mean, he's still Devontae Adams. So
right. That's the best thing you could have said.
I haven't.
Devontae Adams.
I haven't forced anything with it. If anything, I think I have a Devontae with a. Yeah, I have a Devontae with a Javonte. And then a Devontae with a Judy. So I just didn't. When I see. It's to your point. When you see like basically, so Waller and Sutton are there. When you people are there and they line up in ADP and they're easy bringbacks, I try. It's like I'm gonna get them. I know I'm gonna be. That's gonna be an easy click for me most likely. I just try and get different to start, like with pieces that are still the same thing. Like Sutton versus Judy. Like Judy can get there. So that's just been my things when I do that. So I just have some unique pieces in that game, but. Like the same thing. I don't have Russ and I don't have confidence in Nathaniel Hackett at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to go to another game environment, but we'll try and get 2 drafts in or 3 drafts in here and wrap it up in 20. So we don't really need to talk about this other one, but I kind of just want to talk about one player or one team in general, and that's the Chargers. The Chargers, and they're basically Herbert not looking like Herbert so far. Their ADPs are way, way down versus a Houston team that's presumably bad. I don't know what to take away from the first couple weeks. Eckler's crazy inefficient, but Eckler is still he was still that first round talent that we were all drafting in the 5 to 8 range to start this year. And I think he's one of the few running backs with 20 plus targets. I think there's 3 running backs with 20 plus targets. It's Javonte Williams, it's him, and it's Breece Hall. So, I mean, the opportunity is going to be there for Austin Eckler. And to just have a one-off as this piece, as this week's kind of Derrick Henry, where, he's available in the 3rd, 4th round because of recency bias. Can we jump on Austin Eckler is kind of what I'm getting at. Is that something that we're seeing that we like, or are you guys off this Chargers offense right now?
I have 1 Eckler share. So it's basically like at this ADP, I've got a couple Mike and Eckler, and I only really do it if they fall. So it's kind of like these. I wish I could see my average ADP for them. Like I don't know when without looking up in the contest, but yeah, I think it's when they fell. And
right, yeah,
that's the fun thing is we were just talking about it last week. How basically these. You have these contests swing from basically what have you done, like Nez's, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately? Devonta Smith goes from undrafted in every single contest to finally having a big game to now he has an ADP of 20. That's the one thing I found funny. Like Austin Eckler's way down, Nick Chubb's way up. It's just like, it's just so funny to see these swings on a week-to-week basis. In
the recency bias hits hard, right?
It hits so hard in these contests specifically.
So. Hell of a drug, boys. Recency bias.
Yeah. I think you can do a lot worse than taking stabs on talent against the team leading the league in missed tackles.
There you go.
The Texans are. So
there's a good statistical additive to the bullshit I spew. I just throw shit against the wall, and Mark comes in here and goes, "Yeah, well, they lead the league in missed tackles," and I go, "Yeah, fucking right, they do. I knew that."
Yeah.
I need to.
Wasn't it like 27 or something? I was reading the ad. It was like 27 missed tackles. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, they had 27 last week. They added 4 this week, so they're at 31 total.
Okay, let's
right behind.
Sorry. Let's hop in a draft here. Nicholas brings up an interesting point. Will Underdog Fantasy add ownership percentage in these drafts at some point in the future? And my response to that is I hope not. I hope they maybe once the drafts are completed, like DraftKings style, where they add it after the fact, that's cool. But I kind of hope not, so that we can have some third party come in here and create a great tool for projected ownership. I hope Underdog doesn't put that on their own shoulders and make the information public to start. I kind of want someone to monopolize that corner of the projection market in a sharp way. That's selfishly for us to exploit these games. Do I think they should? Yes, I think they should. Right? Like,
yeah, like that's that. Now we're into the discussion of like RTA and like like competitive advantage and all that shit. But
the more that Underdog makes public, the better for the game environment, right? Yeah. So if Underdog introduced like a HUD or overlay technology or stuff like this, so that it was accessible to all players, absolutely, 100% for it, because we don't want to create what happened in DFS, where it was a haves and haves not community. And basically you're just paying the rake every single week, unless you're using an optimizer, unless you're paying for projections, unless you're all this stuff. And if Underdog could do it under their own umbrella, it makes a lot of sense as a company, right? That being said, as a player in those game environments, I want that edge. So it's a double-edged sword there, right? Yeah. Let's jump in 1 or 2 here and see what we got. I do want to point out with the contest structure, they did do away with the Thursday night, Sunday night double. Hopefully it comes back in the form of Sunday night, Monday night, or Monday night, Thursday night would be very interesting for the following week. So if we had week 4 week 4 Monday night paired with week 5 Sunday night, that'd be, I don't know, something to think about. I don't know if it's good, bad, whatever, but just throwing thoughts out there, because the 2-game contest structure is just infinitely better than the single game, in my opinion. But yeah, let's do this. So now, first question off the hop. We talked about 101 without the quarterbacks. With the quarterbacks in there, are you guys gravitating to just buying these quarterbacks at their ADP right here?
I haven't been. I think it's weird. I think when ADP settled, I've actually been getting later picks. So I think my first one was like a second or third, and I did not. I think I took JT. So
I think in a vacuum, to your point there, Neumy, is I really, really exponentially prefer the back end of these draft boards than the front end this week.
If that's the case, you can artificially introduce like leverage by
flipping the build.
Yeah, just bypassing
exactly. Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, because then we'll get unique with combinations that people will be building consistently from the back end of that board, right? Okay, so we got Lamar sitting there for us. Do we want to do a Lamar build? We kind of all agreed as our consensus 101 was Andrews here. Do we want to do the Andrews alpha tight end, or do we want to do the Lamar somewhere else? Where you guys want?
I'm down for whatever. I mean, if we want to try, I'd see if somehow Andrews falls. I doubt it. Otherwise, it would be, you know what I mean, like a Lamar. But otherwise, it would be.
Mark, what do you
Andrews
want? 5 seconds.
Andrews is fine.
Okay, let's do Andrews, and then hope the Christmas miracle is one of those fall. It's very, very unlikely, but yeah. What do you guys feel about just like Andrews, like one off? Just be like, okay, we ate that elite tight end, and now we just need nothing else in that game environment.
I was just thinking about that, and in my mind, it's completely valid because Baltimore is extremely concentrated but low pass volume, and Buffalo is high pass volume but not as concentrated. So if the touchdowns are not flowing through Stephon Diggs, it's likely to be fairly spread out, which is kind of what we saw last weekend. So if you're going to go one-off stab and leave it alone, it's probably most optimal to go through Andrews.
Yeah, I would say we would build our Andrews teams this week in the same capacity that we would build naked Lamar teams. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we got an Andrews start. Do we want to go to that Henry, get that kind of alpha running back there in a game environment that we think could shoot out? Or do we want to go with the elite wide receiver in Adams or Brown?
I kind of like Adams here, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I like that a lot.
I would say Devontae. Devontae is my number one.
Okay.
Over Desmond and Devontae.
Are we concerned in any regard that the way they're covering Adams, and they being the league, is we got Patrick Surtain this week versus him, which is, tough. We don't have to go fully into cornerback wide receiver, but we get Surtain versus him. That's tough. And what we've seen the first 2 weeks is bracket coverage on Adams basically exclusively. And that's kind of what allowed Hollins to eat last week. Do we expect more of the same, Mark?
There's a lot that goes into that, but the Broncos are blitzing at a 42% clip this year. So that's going to leave man coverage, and it's like a lot of one-on-one. Surtain. But Devonta is just the otherworldly wide receiver against man. So I'm not too worried about it. I kind of disregard that largely, but he's going to see a lot of man this week.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Neumy, where your eyes going to on this next pick here? We got some run back there if we want to go that way. We got St. Brown with the Q tag discount. If he falls to us, we can build out that Detroit-Seattle game we were talking about. We could run naked Eckler, or we could even run Eckler with Herbert.
Where do you stand on Amon-Ra, even with the Q tag? Because I know they said he had it was encouraging, whatever it is. It was encouraging today is what I saw, but I don't know where that leaves his availability. So
I think
getting a wide receiver in the third round that has seen double-digit looks in 8 consecutive games, I think you can do a lot worse.
Exactly.
That's where I would gravitate towards still. So yeah.
And that game environment could be the nice shootout of the week that we all want. That's better than the Buffalo one.
And if he does if he's playing we get word maybe Friday or even he's most likely going to play. Oh, yeah. He's an instant click. We never get the value anymore. So that is a good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the benefit of eating the variance of the question mark tag.
Yo,
right now.
check this though, dude.
What do you got?
If Swift is most likely out, Amon-Ra is most likely playing, but his ankle, whatever. Josh Reynolds, Goff, Amon-Ra would be interesting.
Just as a triple there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We I don't know if we need a bring back in that. I've been gravitating towards Lockett right now. I was hyping him.
No, that's what I do.
Today. I like Lockett a lot.
He's free, right?
Yeah, more or less.
You could just do a game stack the shit out of that.
Yeah, I've got this build with Gino, and I've got this build with the Goff side a couple times now, because I really do like that game environment, and it's fucking gross. Nobody wants to click on that shit. Like, nobody wants to click on like Josh Reynolds, and Jamal Williams is pushing up a little bit, but nobody wants to click on those names when you got like CeeDee Lamb's name there, right?
Yeah, but like talking about like game environments, what's likely is to happen? Like Detroit they're still playing with a blazing pace, dude.
Yeah.
And if like, I guess it would be up to Seattle to really launch that game environment, which is gross.
Yeah.
But it's feasible.
Yeah, they've been throwing a lot too. Yeah, I made this comment too. Is the strength of that defense, like they're a pass funnel, and the strength of that defense is putting DK on an island. And then Lockett can just feast in the middle of the field like Devontae Smith now. Okay, this is go time here. We could do the Gabe and get that mini stack there and then worry about running back later. Or we could kind of jump on that and go full game stack with the running back in the stack. Might be rare.
Yeah,
we could do a Javonte bring back. Yeah, you like the Jamal?
Dude. Yeah, do the Jamal and then grab a Goff and.
Sure, Goff and Lockett as kind of
like. I was legit running Goff, Swift, Amon-Ra last week in DFS, so it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, same principle there, like the same environment. And like first down, I think Crane was hyping it, the first down pass rate over expectation for Goff. Like they're just letting him throw, which is like they trust him, you know?
Yeah, because we've done some digging at OWS, and like X has uncovered like how elite Goff is with a clean pocket versus how trash he is under pressure. And now that they have like, you know, if not one of the top 3 offensive lines in the NFL, like he's just sitting back there and allowing to pick apart defenses, which is interesting.
Now I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, like we've kind of made this decision and kind of jump the build on ourselves. There's nothing else that stands out to you guys here, like a Bateman double, a Judy with Andrews, running a Kyler naked. Like none of that jumps out more so than just.
I think at this point you have to commit to the game environment, right?
Yep, sounds good to me.
Because you'll have other opportunities to like get a 3rd or 4th Amon-Ra with a different combination. But like at this point, like where after Jamal, it's like you're kind of committed to this game environment.
Let's jump on James's question here. I think this is very cool. Do you guys like Reynolds over Chark, or do we, Chark's kind of the take the top off guy. He could break a slate in the same way that like MVS could, stuff like that, where it's like low percentage. Whereas like Josh Reynolds is a glorified tight end in the middle of the field. No.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, volume guy. Like Josh Reynolds is poor man's Lockett on the other side of the ball, basically. Do you guys' eyes gravitate anywhere there? Like, I guess this is implying that Amon-Ra's out, or implying to get really unique by not taking Amon-Ra. Is there something there? Do you guys have a lean on either of those 2 players?
I mean, I think if you're doing it at volume, and you'll mix them in, they're almost like they're the same click for me personally. Like it would be okay. I think I have a Chark. So, but I think I thought I had a Reynolds, but I don't. I have a Chark. So I've done Chark, but that's just because it was my first. Like I was just going off, and I'm like, but yeah, if I'm doing like volume, I'd mix them up. But I mean, one off coming. I mean, they have Hawk plus Amon-Ra's questionable, so like they could get more volume, but I like Chark more personally.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna do something before we fire one more draft here. I just want to fire that one right there. Can you guys see that? I'm trying to save the draft board there.
Yeah.
You guys got that? Let's just take a look at it overarching and just, are there any general takeaways from this, guys? I think it looks pretty standard relative to what I've been seeing. And I think one of the most interesting discussion points of the slate is the fact that Herbert and Kyler, kind of coming off bad starts to the season, are these two elite quarterbacks who, in theory, are on the same talent level. They don't have the same rushing floor, or maybe Kyler has the same rushing floor as these first elite three quarterbacks that are going in the first basically 5 or 6 picks every time. And they're kind of like going to be 100% owned, but they're owned in the 3rd and 4th round. I'm mixing them in. I don't know how I feel about it. And I think maybe we should just be gravitating to off the board quarterbacks, kind of like, Goff and Lawrence and Mariota and Geno this week. Do you guys have any thoughts on, Herbert and Kyler specifically as the next quarterbacks off the board that are 100% owned, basically?
Let me relate it from like a DFS perspective. So like the way that I teach quarterback or how to handle quarterback outside of like just targeting game environments and stuff like that is if you're like paying down at the position, you are betting on all the pay up options relatively failing, because those are the only guys that can put the slate out of reach, right? Those are your 40 fantasy point plus potential. The pay down guys, so like on DraftKings, like 6K and below, your secondary, tertiary, whatever 4 is in that, but those in pricing tier, you're betting that all of the pay up guys fail or fail to put the slate out of reach. So that's what we're just saying failing. So like a 30-point game from Josh Allen is okay because like a pay down guy can match that, right? You don't want to be paying down on a slate where it's like like last week was a terrible slate to pay down at quarterback because there were 6 game environments with a 47.0 or higher game total. So you're betting on 12 quarterbacks in those game environments failing to put the slate out of reach. What we saw is both Lamar and Jalen Hurts basically put the slate out of reach. If you did not have one of those two guys, you were not winning shit. So from that mindset, on a slate like this, where there are 2 game environments with a game total of like 50 or more, and there's only one where there's very clear emphasis on, it's a better slate to place the bet on a pay down guy matching the pay up guys, because there's just less, statistically, there are less number of players in top game environments for the quarterback position.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's also leverage in terms of, you're spending your 1st round and 2nd round pick on something else, right? So you get leverage in that environment. Now, where it gets a little hairy is by us betting on Andrews or Diggs in the 1st round. Like, we're also kind of betting on those quarterbacks. So if we're going to be building out low owned, in quotations, quarterbacks, should we really be betting on Diggs or Andrews with our 1st round pick in those builds?
Yeah, because you're saying that the touchdowns flow through those 1st round players. So either Diggs or Mark Andrews, because that's how they hit ceiling. Because of like Lamar Jackson's legs, he can still hit a ceiling without bringing along Mark Andrews, and then they can both hit together because Lamar Jackson's like ultimate ceiling is theoretically unlocked through a pass catcher, because he's highly unlikely to rush for 100 yards, get a rushing touchdown, hit the bonus on DraftKings, and throw like 3 touchdowns to 3 separate players. Like that's a very, very unlikely outcome. So his upside is theoretically unlocked through a pass catcher. So same with Josh Allen. Like he can throw 5 touchdowns and 3 of them go to Stephon Diggs. Like he's done that already this year. He can also throw 5 touchdowns to 5 separate players. So like Josh Allen can theoretically be optimal without a pass catcher, and vice versa. Stephon Diggs can theoretically be optimal without Josh Allen. because
so the way in which we build shouldn't change our mindset on building out contrarian after that just because we have a piece of that game environment.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
Like it is the game environment of the week, right? There's no getting like you can argue with a wall really because it's just so far and away the top expected game environment. But that said, like there are ways to get exposure to that and get different than the field, like we did on this build. Like we're betting on Mark Andrews being the top piece singularity from that game, and then our main game environment is like the second highest game total that also no one is clicking Jared Goff button. So like there's a lot going for it where we don't have to really worry about the Mark Andrews differentiation.
It's kind of sick to bring this up, like how nasty Lamar has been, because he has hit that 100-yard plus 300-yard bonus without consolidating the two. And it's like, is the likelihood of it there? Like, no, but holy shit, he's actually done it. Like, it's weird. Like the theory, okay, dog is getting jacked up here.
I love it.
God. Yo, anything else on this draft board you see there, Neumy, that you want to shout out, or should we just run one last 8-minute draft and get out of here?
The only thing that stands out to me is Kyler went undrafted. So
that's
so
wild,
that's my highest exposed quarterback right now is Kyler. strictly from the 5th and 6th round. It's like I was going to ask Mark. So these in terms of DFS, Kyler right now is like these pay down quarterbacks because you're getting them in the 5th and 6th round, and he, in my mind, has not an otherworldly, but just a little bit higher of a ceiling than say obviously, and we know Goff, but we're making a I would not go Goff in this build, but like it's tough when all of a sudden you're building out that stack. And then you see Kyler still sitting there. It's like, well, it's Kyler. You know he has the possibility.
Yeah.
For me, he has the rushing floor. He can get you there with the rushing floor. He can get those rushing touchdowns. He can he can get there at passing. So it's just tough for me to pass him up. And I've been gravitating towards him. He's my highest exposed court. It's only 33%, but
optimally from a theoretical standpoint. So the how the pricing works down in DFS on DraftKings is like 7K and above is like pay up at quarterback. 6K and below is like pay down, and then you have that nebulous gray region, right? So like Kyler Murray is the 4th highest, most expensive quarterback on DraftKings, and he's priced at 7,600. So he's still a pay up. So from a theoretical aspect, if I'm looking to get Kyler exposure, I'd be looking to get Kyler exposure on Underdog in best ball, and then completely fade him in DK. I like DK. So I like that a lot. Load up because if he's going like 5th, 6th round undrafted, sometimes like he's one of the he has put the ceiling or put the slate out of reach potential at the position.
And that's been my thing, and that was my thesis just on Christian McCaffrey last week. On your point earlier about guys that can just basically initiate the game environment, and all of a sudden taking one home. It was like, I know the Saints defense, I know these theories, but it's like when McCaffrey's falling to the end of the 3rd, 4th, it's like I'm just gonna bet on that talent, and I had them all. Funny enough, I actually got 5th and lost to a Christian McCaffrey team in 1st, so that's irony. But yeah, so like things like that, when you have those guys that can just put it away and you're getting them at this value, it's like it's just so hard for me to give someone else that. And in this terms, we didn't even give it to someone. He just went undrafted, which is funny for me.
Yeah. I think I've been gravitating late to like that mini stack with Marquise. Like I like that a decent amount, but Kyler naked is just like, it's such a nice play because like this is what we were getting at with those two kind of like back end elite quarterbacks is like, we know Herbert and Kyler are kind of on par any given week. We just haven't seen it yet with this like Allen, Lamar, Hurts tier. So what's to say we need to spend that top 5 pick and then when we have these back end talents available as well, right?
Yeah, the thing with Kyler is after he hurt his shoulder last year?
Yeah.
He stopped running. You look at like his rushing output, like at the end of last year after he hurt his shoulder, His red zone rushing rate took a nosedive. His overall team carry share took a nosedive. Now look at this year. He has a game with 5 attempts, and 2 attempts. And it's is this dude ever gonna run? He got paid. Now he's like, nah, dude, I'm a pocket passer, bro. I don't know. But that's an interesting trend for sure.
Ooh, Hurts at the 101 there. I mean, it's kind of crazy that and then Lamar. It's kind of crazy how these 3 quarterbacks are just going off the board every single time, and they're somewhat interchangeable in the field's mind. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be a decision I'm gonna have to make. Is when all of a sudden I'm faced with these picks, do I take these quarterbacks, or
should we bet on Diggs? Yeah, as the game environment.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I kind of like it. I think there's a very viable case for Diggs, Andrews, the 3 quarterbacks, or 2 out of the 3 quarterbacks, in my opinion. Probably not Hurts at the 101. I think there's a very viable, this week, very viable conversation that all of them are in play, and that's kind of why I like the back end of this draft board. My eyes instantly go here over Chubb, Barkley, Henry, AJ Brown, and just CMC is the guy that we want him to be, and he gets the targets this week and he scores the touchdowns.
I think it's just click it. But I think the answer is just any and all, because all of Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, CMC, Derrick Henry, even Austin Eckler, if you want to lump him in there. But the way that I'm seeing this contest is you need to hit nuts or second nuts at running back. There's just no other way to get around it, because there's only one running back position. So any of those guys could hit nuts this week. And I think you just have to
you say there's just one, but there is 2, but there's just one, right?
Yeah, there's just one.
Yeah.
I did happen to scoop a Andrews, Taylor, McCaffrey, and Lamar Jackson team somehow. I don't know.
Whoa. That's nasty. Yeah, I haven't heard anything come remotely close to that. That's wild. And there's your advocate for just drafting the quarterback and seeing what falls, right?
I don't know. It won't tell me, of course, when I picked them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why for me, it's been for CMC, it's the dude. He's the dude I always see fall, and I've continued to see fall. So he's the guy I'm most likely to push, basically, and see if I can get him into that 3rd round, where my eyes would gravitate towards an AJ Brown type, and then see if I can get it. I know we're in the back end of that, but I've seen it happen so often where it's just
okay. Yeah, I like that. No, I think my eyes go CMC and just be he's
it's not a
first round guy. But I think that makes sense given the context of the slate and the fact that there's kind of 4-5-ish interchangeable running backs, that it's kind of push your boundary on running back and see what happens.
Yeah, it's just my tier of where wideouts are. I don't know if anyone. I mean, it's AJ Brown's kind of that tier guy, I guess, with Amon-Ra, but with that. Yeah.
I think if Amon-Ra falls again, we should do it again. Do you guys agree with that, or do you think your eyes would go differently in this scenario? Tight end's interesting because it's pretty. I mean, tight end's pretty heavy up top, where it's just Andrews and then what else kind of deal.
I'd take some God.
Yeah, I think we just keep making this bet till otherwise, right?
That's the 2v2 basically. It's what would you have taken? You would have got in this you would have had AJ Brown, and there's no running back basically. So we basically got a running back, and then you take. So that actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it just happened to work out well this time. Yeah. This is interesting to see the double tight end build here. Just recognizing
it's Rake.
Yeah, you think so? It Rake. Was that.
What if it's Kelsey Andrews though?
Yeah, Kelsey Andrews was in first for a long time last week.
Okay, interesting.
You look at the snap rates, the routes run rates, the targets per route run rates. Tight ends are just so far below the top tier of wide receiver.
Hey, Mark, let's pause for 1 second. Just 19 seconds here. What do you guys want here? I kind of like Naked Kyler. Naked Kyler as a run back off of.
I just gave all the reasons not to do Naked Kyler.
Okay, fine.
It's up to you. Click on something.
Waller. You missed your pick. Well, I think Waller kind of makes sense here after this guy went double tight end. I think there is like a pretty big fall off.
Yeah, double tight end. What we were talking about. Yep.
Yeah. So he went double tight end. Okay, cool. Yeah.
There is no tight end that has. Okay, there's 2 tight ends that have 40-point upside, right? It's Travis Kelce and it's Mark Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
No other tight end has 40-point upside. How many wide receivers have weekly 40-point upside, like 90% outcome?
Right.
10, 11, 12. Yeah. So you're putting yourself at such a theoretical disadvantage by going double tight end, because what are the odds that a tight end, one of the 2, hits a 90% outcome 40-point game? 10% each week, and there's only 2 that can do it. So by taking both of them, you're saying that both of them are going to hit a 10% outcome or 90% outcome 10% of the time on the same week.
Right.
Statistically, it's completely asinine to take 2 tight ends in the constraints of this contest, because it's either one puts the slate out of reach, which for what tight end is this year, it's like 30 points. Like that's your threshold.
Yep.
Either one of those 2 is going to hit 30 points or higher, or they're going to fail to do so and land in the like their floor is like 15 to 20 points. So they're going to land in that range. And then another tight end is going to fall into the end zone and, go put up like a 4 for 60 in one line and match them. Their 15 points at a lower ADP or price in DFS. So like that's what you need to think about, is like what are the theoretical components of like what I'm doing on this roster. And if you're putting 2 tight ends, you're saying each of these tight ends is going to hit a 90% outcome in the same week, and it's going to happen that no other tight end produces a 20-point game, which is like the slate is just out of reach. And it's just statistically such a small percentage chance to happen.
No, I like that a lot.
It's fun to hear because Warner's favorite thing is bully tight end. So
yeah, I like me some bully tight end. Bully tight end.
So
here, hold on before we go here. Do you guys like this as a run back off the Waller, but then we don't have any natural quarterback pairing outside of Carr or Goff or Russ, I guess, or we know he can't take wide receiver, so we could take Herbert and then take Mike Williams after, or we could go roguer than that. 10 seconds.
I think you want to go Sutton here. I think.
That's mine.
Yeah, I mean he can't go wide receiver, so in theory we should probably always take the quarterback first, but regardless, you know what I mean? Like in case he had Devontae Adams and he takes Carr or something like that, we just closed the door on ourselves from a theoretical standpoint, but he didn't anyways. But now, okay. Talk to the theory, or tell me who the pick is here, and then we'll talk to the theory. So now, is this another Goff team with no run back? Is this an uncorrelated Herbert team? Is this a stack with Waller? What do you like, Mark?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I just got done shitting on Russ, but I think it's Russ.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you say?
Fine with it.
It's it would be. I was thinking Carr. I don't know why. But I like.
Okay, it's Neumy. It's Neumy's birthday.
Yep.
It's Neumy's birthday.
Bro.
Don't do it. Don't.
Oh no.
There you go. Happy birthday, bro. No.
Happy birthday.
The reason I was gonna say is like they're.
Get fucked.
Exactly. When you did it, I was like, oh, he's just doing it to spite. No, it's the same. Like for me, it's will Russ give you maybe the little boost of a rush, but he does, you know what I mean? Like I don't see that at all. It's the same. I just like Carr from what I see from Russ. That's why I like Carr. Like, and from it specifically, like it's how I see that, like the Russ games going where they get a rushing touchdown by Javonte or Melvin mostly every in there, and then Russ is just contributing with that 1-2 touchdowns. Where Carr, I think if you really want, he can just get. That's what's going on in my head. So it's literally
The bet on Russ is a bet on Nathaniel Hackett waking the F up. I think because you can largely just the way that offense is built, everything out of the pass game is just outside of an individual pass catcher one-off is like sucked out by Hackett and then the status of that running back. So like what you're betting on Russ is like the touchdowns. They score 4 touchdowns and they all come through the air. That's really the only path to like.
And they all go to Slate. They all go to like 2 go to Sutton and then the rest.
2 go to Sutton.
Whatever,
exactly.
You know? But you're also making the interesting bet about betting on Russ instead of Carr is ownership too, because Carr is going to be way higher owned than Russ will be, especially when Adams and Waller go every single draft. And Sutton is kind of the only piece of that Broncos team that goes like 90% of the time or like 85% of the time. So like we're more apt to score uncorrelated touchdowns with Russ, right? Whereas if we have Carr and Waller, if those touchdowns don't funnel through Waller, like we're not gaining on the field because someone has doubles with Adams or doubles in that regard, right? So we're giving ourselves a chance at unique points through Russ, right? I don't know. It's just
I think that's due to the ADP of the primary pass catchers in the offenses, right?
Yes, I fully agree with that.
That's a great point.
I like that.
Yeah, guys, I know all I make is great fucking points around here. All right.
Yeah. How did Alvin Kamara do last week, bud?
Yeah, I deserve that.
Yeah, he fumbled and just said, "This one's for you, John."
Yeah, he's like, "Fuck you, buddy. Here you go. Donate
sure
that Toyota."
Wasn't that the only touchdown in the game? Was that defensive touchdown, or did they have another one?
No, No, there was another touchdown on the Carolina side. There must have been. It was 22 points. I swear there was another touchdown.
I thought they just kicked field goals that entire game. I thought it was Graham Gano season.
No, you might have been right. I can't remember.
Carolina's defense is for real this year, though.
That's what I was. So that's my.
It was Chenault. Chenault housed a 60.
Oh, you're right.
Yarder.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was. How could we forget? Paul just brought up one last talking point before we jump out of here. He said, would you prefer Lamar Jackson and Bateman? Oh, Callaway had a touchdown as well. James told us there. So on the other side. So we're all idiots. He goes back and forth. If I take Lamar, I'd rather take McKenzie on the other side or just take someone like Lockett, like a one-off opposed to stacking. So he's talking about basically Lamar going a one-off opposed to stacking Bateman and saying that he prefers the one-off and or McKenzie bring back than just going with like a Bateman stack.
Lamar's upside is still, if you think about his 90% outcome, like his ceiling is still unlocked through bringing a pass catcher. Right. It's still unlocked through hitting both bonuses, or like he's one of 2 quarterbacks who can hit both bonuses. And that's his true ceiling. And so like if he's throwing for 300 yards due to how concentrated their pass offense is, it's just like 9/10 Mark Andrews. He's playing like 90% snap rate, right? Yep. Bateman is playing like 65% snap rate.
Yeah, it was 68 last week.
Yeah, and then Devin Duvernay is in the like 55% range. So like if you think about how concentrated their pass offense is, and the fact that his ceiling is still unlocked through hitting the pass bonus, like we're talking putting the Slate out of reach, because if he hits the rush bonus and then like throws for 201, he's not putting the Slate out of reach. And so he's a shit pick in the first round. So if he is putting the Slate out of reach, he is probably bringing a pass catcher, and it's most likely to be Andrews, but could be Bateman as well.
Yeah, no, I like that thought process a lot. I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, here's okay. So Paul's clarifying here. He's a mistype. He's cool with the Lamar Bateman, but next decision is do I want to pair that up with McKenzie or take a one-off like Lockett?
I think you have to spread. I think you have to do both.
I think what we've seen from, and I don't like being results oriented, but what we've seen from the first, 3 weeks of these contests is it's a one-off stack. It's a one-off skinny stack. And now that might be hedged by the fact that Lamar broke the Slate twice and you needed Andrews to get home to win these contests. But it's been a skinny stack and then sometimes a bring back, that has won these slates. You know what I mean? So I think kind of my mind right now is gravitating towards optimally having one and a bring back, and then everything else can be one-offs or uncorrelated. That's kind of where my mindset's gravitating towards. I don't think we need to have minis plus minis necessarily, but I do think I don't think it's not viable, right? I think it's like they're great ways to build. It's just right now what we've seen is that it's these one-time minis.
My best lineups last week, I think my top 5 were all technically mini, and then or cute was the Lamar Andrews, but then another mini mixed in. So I know that doesn't really matter, but I was
so no bring back in the Baltimore game.
I didn't have a.
Well, that might have been game context dependent, though, because
the one thing I just wanted to say is I've seen a lot of Lockett. It's like Lockett and Metcalf are the same thing, and it's like just initially hearing. I've seen Lockett on Twitter twice. I've seen Lockett in here a couple of times. I've seen Lockett in the Discord. It's like, is Metcalf did Metcalf die or what happened? Like right, I know he's not that exciting, but like if they're the same price in ADP and for some reason
he might be the opposite of not exciting. He is exciting. Well, and then the boring one.
But then I saw Jeff Okudah Islands. Like if Okudah's going to be physical with DK, I mean that's not really going to be. Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no. Just, good name to throw out there. We'll break this down more. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll do some more this week. We got special guest, Liam Murphy's coming on, BBM3 winner. I think it's going to be Thursday. I have not yet confirmed, but Liam's going to be jumping on with us. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll pick his brain on some of this. And Mark will be back on Friday. Everybody's favorite time of the show. The end. Happy birthday, Neumy. Thanks for being here, Mark. And look forward to all the content this week. And we'll be back on tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.